everybody, welcome to Que Golazo. We have a great episode for you today. Benge, our very own Benge, interviewed Arsene Wenger. A great conversation where he discussed his legacy, Highbury and the Emirates, his thoughts on Mikel Arteta, Pep Guardiola, and so much more. We have a brief introduction as I chat to James about it, then the actual interview. Enjoy. Hey everybody, welcome back to Que Golazo. As promised, we have Benge here joining me, CBS Sports Benge, as he had a great conversation with former Arsenal manager Arsene Wenger. James, welcome to Que Golazo once again, my friend. How are you?
It's my pleasure to be here. Super excited to be sharing this with you. It's, I think, for anyone that's had the career I've had of mostly covering Arsenal, this is a real highlight. And obviously, I've spoken to Arsene Wenger before, but I've not sat down with him before at length, like in this conversation. I hope everyone enjoys it because I really enjoyed talking to him.
I'm very excited, as well as our listeners, especially Arsenal fans, to hear Arsene Wenger. Any things that we should be watching out for as we get right into it?
I really love talking to him about Highbury and the Emirates Stadium. There's a fascinating relationship there where he views effectively Emirates Stadium as the stadium he built. I mean, honestly, I think he probably thinks that he had a spade in his hand and was shoveling it all out. And he kind of has that view of the Emirates compared to this absolute love of Highbury. And it's really interesting talking to him about how his feelings for these two are so different. But there's loads of great stuff there, whatever you're interested in, whether it's Olivier Giroud, Mikel Arteta, Pep Guardiola. He doesn't maybe like talking about the 8-2 against Man United, but I thought that might be the case.
Yeah, us too. Listen, ahead of the North London derby, this is a great interview with Benge as he interviews Arsene Wenger. Enjoy.
We spoke you leaving Arsenal about how you were keen to do another job. Have you enjoyed this more than you thought you would?
Yes, slowly, yes. I still, of course, it's a different way, but it is a more global approach and can be as well. The response is not as quick as it is in competition, but as well, the influence can be positive and overall, you have a broader, more global view of all the football problems, and it's a little bit less on immediate result and more on thinking how can I improve things.
And that time, it's whatever level of management you're in, it seems like that is the most precious commodity and the hardest to find anywhere in world football at the moment. The time you have now.
Yes, that's true. I have more time available to think as well. And in football, when you as a manager, you always think about the next game. And here you think more about how can you make football more spectacular, better to watch, prepare the future, and give everybody a chance in the world to play football. And that's not the case at the moment because it's the gap, the gulf between Europe and the rest of the world has become bigger. And we have taken on the responsibility to try to move things forward in continents where many people want to play and cannot play at the moment.
I remember in your last few years of management, you said on a few occasions that the game, whether in Europe or in the Premier League, was lacking that spectacular nature. Do you feel that watching from afar that it's not as spectacular as it was, whatever that means?
Well, I would say spectacular maybe, I don't know if I use that word, I just say it's more predictable. Mm. The world has evolution has made football more predictable because of a concentration of a financial power into a few clubs. And that has made it more predictable, yes?
Yes.
If I ask you who will win the championship in France, in Germany, in Italy, in Spain, you all know in England maybe as well. So it is a little bit more in Italy as well. So that made it a bit more predictable because of a concentration of economical power inside the clubs.
Just reflecting on yourself and the last few months and writing the book as well, how did you find the period of reflection? I got the sense you were never one for reflecting while you were in the job.
Yeah, I found it painful. I found it as well in hindsight that somewhere it was a bit interesting. I wanted to do it basically not to say, to explain how special I am or how good I am. I wanted to do it just to explain to people that life can, for young people, that life can be full of surprises and bigger than what you could dream of about, you know, and as well share about what I've learned about top level people, what I've learned about management, and what I learned about human resources that everybody has in himself, you know. That's why at the start of my book, I wrote that we can help everybody to discover how great he can be, you know, as a manager. So that is quite great.
And do you take particular pride from, this was something that Per Mertesacker spoke about as well, about helping people develop as individuals as much as footballers? Is that something that you take particular pride in?
Yeah, I think you're proud. If you can influence people's life in a positive way, it's something that is satisfying, and we do not always manage to do it. Let's not be fooled as well, you know. But it's when you can do it, it's great. It's a great feeling.
And this was, I spoke to your former chief scout, Francis, a few weeks ago about this same thing. How you as an organisation managed to find players that shared the values of Arsenal and the deep connections that you yourself had. How do you go about finding that in a player, in a footballer? How do you know if they're the right fit for a particular club?
I would say, first of all, to get to share the values, first you must have a clarity about the values that are important for you, and then you have to formulate them clearly as well, and then you can maybe share them with people. But it is basically to create a culture of behavior, a culture of performance, and it is about what do we want, what do we not tolerate inside the club, you know, and overall, I would say define values. I think we developed well the Arsenal name because we developed values that are shared with everybody, give chance to young people, behave in a certain way, try to play entertaining football, this kind of values that then after that, you try to find people who have a good balance between motivation and intelligence, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. There was one part of your, I mean, there were obviously many great parts of your Arsenal career that you didn't strike on in the book. One that stood out, and why would you want to bring it up, I guess, was the period after that defeat at Old Trafford, the 8-2. I wouldn't want to make you dwell too much on that, of course. But I thought there was a moment there that has informed Arsenal's history ever since, most of all with the players you signed, Per Mertesacker and Mikel Arteta, who are now key figures in the club. Do you gain any pride from how the club responded to, and how you yourself responded to, that really tough day in Arsenal's history?
Well, the day, of course, was tough because it was a bad result, but you have to put the result. Big results have never big meaning, you know. It is a big media fuss about it, but Liverpool lost already 7-2 at Aston Villa, and nobody made a fuss of it, you know.
Yeah.
And so, and we are still top of the league. I believe on the day we had over half of the team out, and we played 3 days before. in an unbelievable heat, qualify against Udinese and qualified. So on that day, the result was nearly predictable, you know. But it's as well life, top level sport is about to recover from disappointment and get on with it, you know. That's it was not, I must say, something that I have in my mind today from my career at Arsenal, you know. Even if it was, of course, you are angry, you're disappointed, but when you look back, there is an explanation behind it.
What did you see in Arteta and in Mertesacker when you were signing them as players? And do you see the same?
Well, they were focused and motivated, you know, and after that, they have to make the career. That's not done yet, you know. They just start, you know, and they are as well in a position where they can, I think, represent the Arsenal culture, the way to behave, the way to educate people, the way to play football. So overall, I felt that over the generations, I had many players who could have done this job, but they were at the right moment in the right place.
Is it just a quirk of timing? What qualities do those two men have to lead Arsenal?
I think they have a certain ethical aspect in the way they approach their job. They are focused. They have a desire to improve, internal need to improve, and that's a good basis. And they are intelligent.
Do they suffer maybe the same challenges that you suffered, Mikel in particular, about a lack of patience from Arsenal supporters, from football supporters in general?
Look, I don't believe in patience in football. You know, you have 3 months to have when you arrive somewhere. And if I look at my clubs, everywhere I arrived, it didn't take me 3 years to have an influence. You know, that's an idea that floating around, but it is never works that way. Or you have an influence at the start, or you never have one.
Do you see that Mikel has that influence?
Look, I think so, yes, but I am not at the club. After it's the way the team plays and the games you win or you lose, you know, it's simple. It's about results. Despite all that, what gives you credibility is, do you win or lose football games? You know, it's as simple as that.
Absolutely. But do you know, when the Premier League is at the level it's at now, that, you know, does there have to be an acceptance that there will be these periods of difficulty for every top side? I mean, you mentioned Liverpool there, Man City.
I don't think the Premier League is better now than it was 10 years ago.
What makes you think that?
If you look at the Manchester United team or the Chelsea team 10 years ago, they had top quality players. You know, people forget when we played the invincible season, Man United was Ronaldo, was Cristiano Ronaldo, Van Nistelrooy, Scholes, Giggs, and they had an exceptional team, you know. So the competition was always of a very high level. After Chelsea had the Drogba, Lampard, Robben, and all these players, you have. I don't believe a second that that has changed in England in the last 15 years. We had the best players in the world.
Do you think the quality has become more spread out as well around every team has a, you know, Aston Villa have a Jack Grealish, every team has a top level player in a way maybe they didn't a few years ago?
Had as well 15 years ago, you know. They had Jack Grealish at Aston Villa. They had top level players in the clubs. I don't believe that at the end of the day will change the result. What has happened is maybe the scouting has become better in the smaller clubs. over the years, the science has been moved into these clubs as well in scouting, and they make better decisions in buying players.
In terms of the broader Premier League as well, one of the interesting trends of late has been the two top managers, Pep Guardiola and Jurgen Klopp, both seem to be setting down roots for the longer term. You've rebuilt one title winning side into another. How do you go about doing that and building a career beyond 3 or 4 years at one club?
By making the right decisions at the right moment.
What decisions did you make right in 2003 or around that, in the early 2000s?
I don't know. I think, first of all, they are ahead. There are two intelligent managers. They are ahead of clubs who have financial potential to buy the players, who are the best players in Europe at the moment. So I trust them. They will do that very well.
Why did many managers not want to do what you did? The thing that shines through the book so much is that you never regret spending so long at Arsenal, that there's no wish that you'd tried another club. Why didn't other managers enjoy moving elsewhere? What do you think?
Look, first of every manager is different. Every manager works with his own personality. And I was as well the longest serving manager ever in Monaco. What people forget, so maybe it's down to me. And I believe as well, I have a kind of personality who likes to belong to something that he believes is bigger than him, and an organization as well where I believe who shares my values and my beliefs. That was for a long time the case at Arsenal. That's why I stayed for a long time. And as well, I was in a challenge. I pushed the club as well to build a new stadium. So I did it.
Did your values end up being shaped by Arsenal? And did you ever get the sense that was happening in the other direction?
No, when I say that, I think one of a person thinks of my character as well. I need to have the freedom to work like I want to work, even if it's with restrictions that I accept. But I needed the freedom to work like I wanted to work.
Another key part of the book is when David Dein leaves. It feels like there's a real moment of self-doubt there. Looking back, when you came to rewriting that, did you feel like you were maybe closer to leaving Arsenal then than at any other time?
Yes, I was.
What convinced you to stay?
The fact, first of all, that David Dein asked me to stay, and the second thing is to go to the end of that challenge is to pay the stadium back. Today Arsenal is in a very strong financial position. Since I left, they invested a huge amount of money, because when I left, there was money there. We're not bankrupt, The stadium is paid, the money is there. So I think you want to leave the club in a position where you can prepare the future. And
you said, in those final few months, you felt like you were leaving the club in a better place than you found it. What for you in particular made you think that way at the time?
Look, when I arrived, there was no training ground, there was no stadium, and I built both, and without one penny of help from anybody, only with the resources we created for the quality of our work. So that's what makes me think like that,
One of the things one of the great examples of that, I suppose, is the transfer of Nicolas Anelka, which I think is one of many that you kind of mention in the book. You feel no ill will, no regret. Is that because you see what you were able to achieve in light of making those sales?
No, I said I have regrets of every mistake I made in my life. I do not say I made no mistakes, and I regret every one I made. I think I have no remorse because I could work with the values I wanted to work, and that's basically it. Nicholas Anelka wanted to leave, and so I'm sorry that he left, but overall, I believe it was a bit early for him.
I mean, the other kind of major transfer that's briefly mentioned in the book is that of Ashley Cole. Was there no temptation when you're writing this? You say that there's certain circumstances, but don't divulge much more. Was there no temptation to put across your side of the story, to maybe settle a few misconceptions and misunderstandings?
Well, it was a misunderstanding about £5,000. That's all, you know. And after that, they left, but he was tapped up by Chelsea at the time, and the deal was done, you know.
In general, though, so in general terms, I mean, were you not keen to give your side of the story more? It seems as you say, a book about helping people to understand how young men, yourself included, and then the players you coach, how they develop, and not perhaps one that's given over to explaining why you were right in certain circumstances, and why your side of the story is the correct one.
Well, I explained about, I didn't want to go too much into little stories, you know, because I made about 450 transfers, and as you mentioned by Ashley Cole, every transfer could basically be a book, you know, if you wanted to talk about it in detail. But I wanted more to give broader lessons of what I learned, and speak about more that even if you have not a childhood that prepares you to have a life at top level football, you can still make it.
I think that really shines through in the book, and particularly, you know, the passages about your own career. One of the things, though, that is really apparent is it's quite relentless. Your career goes from retiring to soon playing and coaching, and then you're on to your next management job and your next. I think there's one brief period, isn't there, between Monaco and the move to Japan, where you have time to reflect. Yeah,
it was only basically 1 month, because in November I moved already to Japan. You know, it's a holiday.
Do you wish there was more time, more moments of reflection?
No, because I loved it, you know, and I think I'm not scared to say I dedicated my life to that, because you need to find the meaning in your life, and football was the meaning of my life. I know it can sound stupid, and the dedication I had for my club can sound stupid as well, but I'm like that. So I couldn't, and maybe even didn't try to change, because if happiness is to lead the life that you love, I must say I was very happy.
And there were never sort of any prolonged moments where you thought, is this the life I love? Never any paths that you thought, maybe I should try this different career?
I didn't question my life, no. I questioned my ability to do well, yes, many times. But I never question what I did, no.
What, I suppose for a lot of people, and, you know, I grew up at the period when your Arsenal teams were the best in Europe. Why would you question your own ability to achieve at that level when you were, you know, you had...
Because I think to work at the top level, you always have to... The basic job of a manager is to take the best out of a potential of the team. I think you never know, did you take the maximum out of your team? When you win a championship without losing a game, you can say yes, because there's not room to do much better. So I always questioned my ability to do that. And overall, I think, you know, people will always keep this period. But I think I took the maximum out of the team later on many times, but we had not the same potential.
And I think as Arsenal fans have started looking back, there's a newfound respect, understanding for how challenging that period around the Emirates Stadium was. And you reflect on this in your book. It was, I mean, how do you compare that as an achievement to the Invincibles? Because
I don't know. I just think we qualified 19 times on the trot in the Champions League and moved 19 times out of a group stage, you know, and overall, when you look at it today, maybe or with a bigger distance, it will look, the consistency at the top level is the most difficult. And we see that in every single club.
And perhaps people didn't quite appreciate how trying these circumstances were, because
no, I can understand that, because it's not so much their problem, you know. They want to win the championship and the cup and the Champions League, what I can understand. But overall, I would say today maybe they realize that kind of consistency is not easy.
There's a strange sort of relationship that you seem to have, goes throughout the book, with your love of Highbury and your pride in the Emirates Stadium. Would you say that's a fair approximation of your relationship between the two?
Yes.
And there's one lovely little passage that that crops up as well, where you said you looked at buying a house in Highbury. It's only a moment. Could you maybe expand on, did you really think about buying one of those flats? Because they're not cheap.
Yes, but I was thinking, no, maybe it's not the best thing to do it, not to invest at the moment we are building it. I always didn't want to buy a share nor a flat, because I didn't want as well, honestly, to be accused of doing something, taking advantage of something at the club, you know. During my whole period, I didn't use the credit card of Arsenal even to invite agents or players. I paid for myself, you know, because I knew that was a very sensitive period, and it starts with the leaders. So, but it's true that I have a strange relationship with Highbury, maybe because you feel somewhere when you walked in, you're part of history, you know, and you have on your shoulders the responsibility to continue that history of the club, and where you feel a soul in every part of at every corner, you know. And after that, yes, I think the Emirates is a great stadium that I love, but and that was needed. But still, my first success was there. I was questioned, and I straight away win the championship. So it is something special relationship with the stadium, and it shows as well. You know, when you drive down Avenue Road, you walked out through the supporters. Today, you drive in the stadium, you don't see anybody. The distances have improved, you know, between people. The human warmth has gone a little bit more. It's all a bit more separated.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean from Highbury. Though that first time you stepped in those marble halls, did you know even then that there was something special about this club and you?
You when you walked up the stairs there and you moved in, you knew. You know, I think everybody who played there would say yes, would know about it.
It's an amazing building. And when you left it for the last time, did you regret it? Did you ever?
Yes, I was keen as well to move into a new stadium, but I knew a new chapter was starting, and maybe I knew as well walking out there that it would be much more difficult, you know, to continue to compete when the financial resources were, of course, much shorter, and the stadium was planned to be at 250 million, and we finished at 428, something like that. So, of course, I knew that the financial restrictions would be a difficult burden.
Did you this might feel perverse, but did you enjoy managing under that burden?
Yes, of course, because it was another way to deal to do well. For me, it was another way to do well.
Did taking you a bit further on during that time, obviously, one of my abiding memories covering you was those annual general meetings, and also, you know, this comes into all those questions about the stadium and finance. Did you often feel like you were compelled to cool the atmosphere around the club, to keep the supporters on side? Were you aware of that as a challenge?
A little bit, but I just felt as well that it was a period where you could put things into perspective and explain a little bit things. You know, it's amazing because today the same results would be fantastic.
Absolutely, they would. You know, you would be a hero right away. Is that something that you would like to help Arsenal to explain to Arsenal supporters? Do they kind of need reminding how?
No. I think you want to everybody. You know, when you give your best, and when you go, and you leave now people to do a good job and to make good results. The only thing I would want to say is that I left the club in a good position with a new stadium, basically paid, and with money. And then after that, you let other competent people work and do their job well.
Did you, during the time when you were, you know, the period in between you announcing you were leaving and the final games and going up to that final game, what was that period like for you?
Well, I would say I tried to enjoy the last moments where I was at the club. I knew that certainly I would not be in touch with the club anymore because that's not what the club wanted. And after all, I tried to do as well as I could until the last moment of the season and be professional until the last minute of the season.
There seemed to be a release of tension around the whole club. Was that something you felt when you made that statement, or when the statement came out and you said you were leaving?
I don't know.
Of course, that's totally understandable. But you gave the impression early on that, you know, that you may not enjoy saying goodbye. I think from afar it seemed that it was something you enjoyed more than you thought you would.
No, not really. No, if I could have made it in a discreet way, I would have done it. That doesn't mean I did enjoy it, but overall, I feel that I'm looking back. I'm thankful and grateful to the way it has happened on the last day, but I think people will recognize that I tried to give my best for the club as long as I was there.
I'd just like to ask you about one of your former players, a player that's been talked about a lot and was talked about last night after his excellent performance. Olivier Giroud, both for France and for Arsenal and for Chelsea, he's a topic of sort of constant debate as to whether or not he's underappreciated, correctly appreciated. I remember you saying around the Olympiacos game where he scored a hat-trick that he had been a bit underappreciated in England. Is that still the case?
Well, yes, but I would say if you look at the number of games he played at Arsenal, you will be surprised, you know, compared to the number of games he played at Chelsea. I think until the last period of his career at Arsenal, he played nearly every game. So overall, I said that many times as well. In the French national team, is always a debate about him. But Olivier Giroud has, apart from his footballing qualities, he has an absolutely strong mentality and a strong motivational level. and there's qualities that nobody else has. You know, he can always be a resource inside a club, even when he doesn't start the game. And there's an immaculate mentality. He's a real team player, what is not always the case for strikers. And overall, I think he's an exceptional personality. And that's why every time you think he's disappeared, he bounces back.
Did you, I mean, well, there must have been moments at Arsenal when you thought you were looking at other strikers. I remember there was a time when Welbeck played up front, Sanchez.
Lacazette.
He kept surprising you, didn't he?
Yeah, he's always, there's no coincidence. He has over 100 caps for France, Nobody gives you 100 caps to please you.
You mentioned Tottenham and your relationship with them in the book. Did you ever enjoy the North London derby?
I did, yes, of course.
Even when you did,
it was intense games, and that's what you want. You want to play a game of significance. And that was one that had more significance than others.
And was it more enjoyable, therefore, if the significance increases because they're Tottenham are nearer to your level when you arrived? It was, and certainly once you've been established for a while, there was a big gap in North London. But did you like seeing them get closer to Arsenal?
No, because I wanted us to keep a big difference always with Tottenham. When I arrived, they had good teams, When you look at the teams they had very good teams with Ginola, Campbell, and all these players. Ledley King, they had great players. But I think we had at that time, for a long time, better teams. But I think they had, since 5-6 years, they had a good young generation, with Kane, Dele Alli, and this generation. So they came back closer.
You said in the book that Pat Rice always wanted you to play your strongest, most physical teams, and you always went for the technicians. Is it still a game that you win with your technical players, with your Henrys and Perez's?
Well, no, the Henry and Pires you do not find at every corner of the street, What I mean is, what I wanted to say is that the level of motivation and the intensity was so high that in England, when the tension is high, you think always about fight, So that's what I wanted to say in that.
And that, it helped when you had these technical players that would also fight every inch of the way as well.
They could fight as well, yes.
They certainly could. Arsene, I really appreciate your time. Just one final question from me, broadly on where football is right now, and whether at individual clubs and in the game as a whole, when results are going wrong, when there's tough times, do we forget about the values of clubs, of the sport? And are we at risk of forgetting about it now?
Well, one thing we can know, I don't think that, but one thing is for sure, is that we are in a period that you could call a period of needed solidarity, and that's what is basically the case at stake today. And in a period where the strong may be tempted to become stronger and survive themselves, we have as well to think that solidarity is at the moment at stake. That is the most important, because we need the strong teams, but we need as well the lower divisions and the lower teams.
Arsene, thank you so much for your time. I'm hugely grateful. As a boyhood Arsenal fan, you're pretty much the only manager I ever knew. So I really appreciate your time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Welcome back, everybody, to Kego Lasso Pod. I really hope you enjoyed that conversation. And to just wrap things up, I wanted to bring James back because he knows, as I know, I do this every single day, and so does he, that when you have a guest with such magnitude, it can be kind of a tricky situation to not just book him, but also, what he's going to be like and what you're going to talk about, the length, the duration of the time. So I wanted to bring James back. James, welcome. A fascinating chat. It was so great. Just how difficult was it to just, have him?
it's tough. These things always take a lot longer than you think. And I know I promised to you and to my editors on at least one previous occasion, here's my date, here's my time. But you're dealing with really busy people. I mean, as he said at the beginning of the interview, this guy's trying to reform world football. He doesn't always have time to talk to CBS. So, I mean, it's a long process. I have to say, huge thanks to the team at Chronicle Books who are publishing his book. And they've not asked me to say that, but especially Julie Baker and the team at Chronicle Books for helping us to get this together. I mean, and then you kind of, with these things, you were in the lap of the gods sometimes. When you get the opportunity to interview Arsene Wenger, you have to drop things. And in my case, that meant quite literally at that minute, dropping an interview with Lucas Moura, because Arsene Wenger has dialed onto his Zoom call an hour early. So he's ready to talk. So you better be ready to talk. And maybe that's why at the beginning I might sound a little bit taken aback, but we made it work. I mean, also, like, can I just reflect, and you know this as well, the quality of people we are getting on CBS Sports right now. Whilst I was supposed to be interviewing Lucas Moura, our colleagues Lucho Garcia, Champions League winner, and Jonathan Johnson, who hasn't won a Champions League, but can't blame him for that. They were interviewing Erling Haaland, and I was then supposed to be interviewing Lucas Moura, and then we were going to jump straight into Arsene Wenger, and things all got a bit hectic, but we made it work. And what a trio of interviewees to have at the exact same time. It was a real pleasure. I mean, I don't want to kind of go too long. I could talk for as long about the interview as the interview actually was, but a real pleasure for me as someone that's followed Arsenal his entire life, just to hear from Arsene Wenger. And I know for him, I'm sure these things can get quite lengthy, and he's done quite a few of them, I think it's fair to say. But, you know, this is a man that speaks with such wit and insight and charisma, and I'm hoping, you know, I managed to help him bring some of that out, and really loved hearing from him about Highbury, about you know, his philosophies, about his regrets, and so much else.
Yeah, if you're a young Arsenal fan, I really recommend you just, you know, try and understand, you know, what that kind of Arsenal was under Wenger, especially in those early years and everything that he created. It was a really great conversation. James, let me ask you one last thing before we say goodbye. You know, you're a, you know, lifelong childhood Arsenal fan as well. You know exactly what he brought to Arsenal. Talking to him, like, what was your, did you get what you expected? Was it different? Was it more? What was it like?
I didn't get what I expected. Partly because he, you know, for people that are of my age, so I was 15, 14, 15, 14 when Arsenal completed their invincible season. You know,
God, you're so young.
I know. I grew up in this era, and I remember talking back when I was doing something with a friend of mine who's also an Arsenal fan for Arsenal's 20th anniversary, and there was this thing of, you know, you pretty much know that whatever happens over the rest of your life following this football club, it may well not get better than what you experienced as a teenager. It's that like, you know, that you know, in all the high school films where people are like, this is going to be the best summer ever, but actually that year, from a football fan's perspective, it was the best year ever, and you can never go back. And that's one of the odd things about, you know, people like myself covering Arsene Wenger, is we've grown up in an age where he was also one of the few consistent male figures going through our lives. And obviously he doesn't, you know, he doesn't think of it like that. For him, this is a passion, something he has, as he said in the interview, given his all to. But, you know, it's a job. He doesn't really think of the impact he couldn't live with, think of the impact it's had on millions of people around the world of all ages. So it's always a bit odd when you have that side of your own personal life experience, trying to meld that with your professionalism and trying to kind of balance those. I still find challenging when I talk to Wenger, and been in hundreds of press conferences with him before. But I mean, you know, at the same time, I'd much rather it was an odd experience than to have no experience at all of it. And I'm extraordinarily grateful for his time. I think he's kind of, these interviews have been a really interesting way of him explaining just his experience. The book is interesting. I think it's the book he wanted to write and potentially not the book everyone wanted to read. But yeah, I mean, I hope the interview is one that people enjoy reading and listening to and watching on HQ as well.
Yeah, well, it most definitely was on Que Golazo. James Benge, so great to have you. Thank you so much for the interview. And again, we welcome more and more, as you mentioned, and our CBS Sports team continues to grow. James, thank you so much, buddy.
Thank you.
I want to thank James Benge and, of course, Arsene Wenger for being part of our CBS Sports content. Make sure that you listen to us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Stitcher. And we will be back very soon as we recap all the weekend action, including the North London Derby. Have a great weekend.